and I'll call upon Councillor John Wilmot to continue.
Oops, upset him already. Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, thank you. It's lovely, marvellous. Although we have the council's budget before us today, the big main issue has once again not been addressed, and it is the number one issue: the state of our broken roads and pavements. In places like Hucknall, across Ashfield, and in the rest of Nottinghamshire, there are potholes appearing everywhere, and many are in areas where only months ago they were poorly repaired, and the holes have again appeared in the same place. Ooh. Can I say, Chairman, that the council must waste millions revisiting these botched potholes, and it is a serious situation. Yet you tell us that you don't have the data to tell us how many. I simply don't believe it. I really don't. And can I say that it is putting people's lives at risk. It is putting people's lives at risk because the holes are so deep in certain areas. If a vehicle hits one of these potholes, the consequences could be catastrophic for those that are actually in the car. Last year, we were promised that the new way of repairing the problem areas were going to be brilliant. You said it would be revolutionary and would solve the serious problems that we are having. I'm sorry to say that is not happening. The problem seems to be worse. In over 30 years of being involved in local politics, I've never seen our highways in such a diabolical condition. Now, Mr. Chairman, we come to pavements. Many have not been touched for decades. Decades. I know that from my street. I'm getting more and more complaints about the poor condition of drop curbs, broken surfaces on pavements, and other problems. Can I say? So enough money needs to be put into the budget to be able to put our roads and pavements into an acceptable state of repair. That is why I'm supporting the Independent Alliance People's Amendment to put more resources into the road and pavement repairs budget and leave the Council's divisional fund budget for members the same. Much of that money is keeping the community groups ticking over, and we must not allow them to fold into oblivion. I mean, when I mean we mustn't let them end. It's the position that there's so many good deeds being done with that money at the moment. That's why it's essential that we should have the amount that we've already got. It's only 132,000. It's a pittance, really, in the amount of budget that we really have got. You know, it really is a pittance. I see that you have put the road maintenance and renewals programme down as a major capital programme success. That's your saying in the budget. An absolute success. In Hucknall, it is terrible. I represent Hucknall North. I've reported more roads than I've had hot dinners. Now, we come to the and I have a regular hot dinner, I can tell you. Now we come to the consultation response. You seem to have made a lot of its content. 2,554 respondents out of a population of nearly 800,000. Is that enough to get a fair reflection on what the population are asking for? It equates to 3.25% of the population. Is that a fair amount? If it had been at a general election, the forecasters would not have given even any response at all, saying, oh, there's not enough people voted yet to make an assumption. That would have definitely have happened. So how you're saying that 3,000 is fantastic, and that's what you've been saying, double the amount of last time, is still pittance. Now we come to the banding values. We're still using the old banding values from years and years ago. Values, it says Band A value houses are up to 40k. Where's the joke there? £40,000? You couldn't buy a garage for that. Well, and the bands, I say, all the bands are so far out of date, it's unbelievable. It's time that the government got the act together and did it. Are they frightened of losing some votes by putting the correct amount of money into each band? I don't know, but that's what it seems. Our children and young people centres must be used more comprehensively to help families learn about family values. I've been on about that, as you know, Councillor Doddy. Thanks very much for bringing me in each time. It's been fabulous that I've been able to speak about this issue. And to say, help with preventative interventions, and our residents must be able to obtain the necessary information, advice and guidance to battle against the cost of the living wage, which living crisis. And it's absolutely essential. We've got to do more to help people. Not all of us are fluent in this country, in this county, in this city, in this towns. All the towns, they've got affluent people, and you should be quite happy to help the others that haven't got any resources at all, or very few. As I say, we've got to help in bringing up the children in a manageable way. Now we move to street lighting. You put 4 million in the budget to replace lanterns in the streets for lower energy options. The problem with that, it leaves streets in semi-darkness. My street, they've put the new lights in, and I'm frightened to walk down because I can't see in front of me. It's so dark. It's ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous, and it leaves, as I say, um, if I'm feeling upset about the situation, what's the other pensioners that have got disabilities and walking problems and things like that? Because, as I say, with the potholes in the road and the pavement's not so good, if you can't see them, you'll trip over them, won't you? It's just, it's just logical positions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know my thoughts contradict some of the budget proposals, and I'm sorry for that. But I'm thinking of the people out there. They are the residents, and that's what matters to all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilmot. Councillor Adair.
Hope you've added the time in where I've been disrupted. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you. Chairman, I support the budget proposals presented by Councillor Jackson, especially the elements that fall within the remit of the Cabinet Member for Economic Development and Asset Management, Councillor Keith Girling, and myself as Deputy Cabinet Member. Regarding asset management, we seek to ensure that our Cabinet colleagues and their departments have the right physical resources in place to work efficiently and effectively, given that the way we work has changed dramatically over the past 10 years and continues to do so. It would be wrong to say that the COVID pandemic began our transition towards hybrid working, because the hybrid approach was already being rolled out before COVID even appeared on the horizon. However, it is certainly true to say that COVID led to a dramatic increase in the pace of that rollout. No longer are our services and staff predominantly office-based or paper-based. We now live in a world of flexible working and increased digitalisation, where staff and residents can request, access and control our services at the touch of a button from any location with a Wi-Fi connection. One effect of the COVID lockdown was that some people who had previously resisted moving to digital methods of communication suddenly felt obliged to try it out of necessity, and I suspect now ask themselves why they didn't do it sooner. Our Improving Residents Access programme is catering for the growing demand from customers for digital access to the Council to be the norm. But we still cater for those who cannot or do not wish to communicate digitally, for example, preferring to telephone our customer service centre. We cannot be denied, as we no longer justify running and maintaining the number of office buildings we once did. In the days when many staff worked from their own individual rooms and desks, and when residents frequently visited council buildings in person to meet officers and transact business, life has changed for good. Through modernisation and digital technology, we've reduced our number of office buildings from 17 to 9, delivering a net saving of around 105,000 on overheads to date, with at least 230,000 of further savings already assumed in our forthcoming medium-term financial strategy. Of course, we still need office buildings, just fewer than before. And that's why our services in future will be administered from a smaller number of modern, energy-efficient hubs at key strategic locations throughout the county, such as Beeston, Hucknall, Mansfield, Retford, and Worksop. With our new set of hub buildings, the flagship will undoubtedly be our forthcoming state-of-art offices at Top Wigry, a council-owned site whose future use was being discussed long before I became a county councillor 20 years ago. Top Wigway office will be built to the latest and best environmental specifications in line with the authority's commitment to be carbon neutral by 2030. And it will help towards revenue savings for taxpayers of 1.35 million a year from reduced energy. But the Top Wigway project goes much further than that. Last April, we officially appointed a new housing developer, Vista Partnership, to deliver 805 new homes, and the site will also host a new primary school. And we estimate that the project will create more than 1,000 new full-time jobs and boost the local economy by more than 873 million over a decade. Chairman, some have argued over the years that Nottinghamshire County Council, with its headquarters at County Hall in West Bridgford, feels too remote. From the northern parts of Nottinghamshire, I think that's actually less true today than ever before, because the council can now be accessed instantly from any house or business that has good Wi-Fi access, and we've invested more than 30 million in our Better Broadband for Nottinghamshire programme to ensure 98.4% of properties and businesses in the county now have such access. However, if we're talking about physical location, then yes, the new Top Wigway office will obviously be closer to the centre of the county than West Bridgford is. Following a review of our buildings, which was completed by the Overview Committee 2 weeks ago, the Cabinet member will soon make recommendations for the future use of the remaining major building estate, namely County Hall and Trentbridge House in West Bridgford, Meadow House in Mansfield, Longview House in Sutton and Ashfield, Welbeck House and Thorsby House at Sherwood Energy Village and Ollerton. I don't know why one or two members objected recently to the Councillor Gerling publicly explaining the costs associated with running County Hall and the potential for it to be used as something other than a council office in future. Discussing such options does not preempt a decision. Councillor Gerling would be subject to a business case process in line with the recommendations of the Overview Committee. But I think most people find it refreshing to hear that these matters being discussed in a straightforward, open, and not warped up in vague politician or office speak. We are listening to all the feedback we're receiving, and the Cabinet members' recommendations will be firmed up in the coming weeks, providing the public and our staff with a clear picture of our vision for the future of our estate. Meanwhile, we continue that what you might call good housekeeping with regard to these buildings and smaller buildings on our estate to minimise overheads and to ensure as such money as possible is released from bricks and mortar into frontline service delivery. During the coming year, we'll be carrying out detailed condition surveys and asset management planning. We'll ensure that our spending on property maintenance is targeted on critical maintenance and safety issues, rather than the cosmetic improvements to buildings whose future is still to be determined. Our survey and planning work will then ensure that spending in future years is better targeted within the properties we retain. Last April, the Council completed its transformation to a full corporate approach to the management of its property estate, with the creation of the Property Estate Safety and Facilities Management Team. Services have been consolidated and are being delivered in a way that better meets the needs of the departments who occupy our buildings. We have also delivered efficiencies by combining previously separate budgets and through the central management of contracts, setting consistent service standards. We are disestablishing any vacant posts that are no longer required. We will also begin to enhance programme to dispose of some houses formerly owned by council caretakers that are not suitable for any other use by the council. These would otherwise incur ongoing costs, for example, security, empty house council tax and landscape maintenance, as well as saving on these revenue costs and raising the capital receipt. The disposal of these properties could also place new potential homes on the market at a time of significant housing needs. Well, the papers stick together. So, at last autumn, Chairman, we took decisions to close several council offices for 2 weeks over Christmas and again at Easter. This saves on energy, cleaning and waste collection costs. At holiday times when footfall of these buildings from staff and visitors has always been low. With many staff taking annual leave, our ability to do this is a direct result of successful development of our hybrid and flexible working strategy, ensuring we continue to deliver services, but from fewer buildings, thereby saving the taxpayer and reducing our carbon footprint, acting upon our climate emergency and net zero commitments. Our corporate and strategic approach to the management of our property assets underpins the Council's transformation process. It's one of the many reasons why we can make public money stretch further and still deliver discretionary services that have long since been lost to residents in other council areas. For that reason, Chairman, I support the budget proposals which will enable us to continue this good work. Thank you. I'd just like to remind you of something, Chairman, if I can just find it back in the notes here. Yeah, it's just the one about, I don't know why one or two members object recently to Girly. No, that's not what I want to remind people of. I know what I want to remind people. Yeah, this is the one, Chairman. Have I still got a minute? Top Wigway office to be built to the latest and best environment specifications in line with the authority's commitment to be carbon neutral by 2030, and it will help towards that. But the Top Wigway project goes much further than that. Last April, we officially appointed a new housing developer, Vista, to partnership.
Yes. Thank you, Councillor. You have actually already said that.
805 new homes. The site is also host to a new primary school. We estimate the project will create more than 1,000 full-time jobs and the local economy will...
Chair, time's up. Come on.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you very much. Who's he?
Councillor Oliver, please. I want a little bit more decorum in this chamber. You don't shout.
Where do you find people like that, Chairman, to shout at other members?
Thank you, Councillor Adair. Councillor Fold.
Go. Thank you, Chairman. And I will be speaking on the Conservative budget. What concerns me most about the way you've been describing this budget is how complacent you sound. I really don't think you've much idea about what people are really going through, how difficult it is for them to keep their heads above water. And Councillor Jackson, you mentioned that the settlement gives us more time. I think those are your exact words. Well, time is running out for some of our residents and our small businesses. Certainly, my casework and that of all the Labour group tells us that many people are both struggling and scared. To say we're doing more for less, and if we all work together it'll be all right, is complacent at best and dishonest at worst. It's obvious to us all on this side of the chamber, thresholds for accessing care are higher, waiting lists are longer, and people are suffering as a result. The evidence is clear, and here's just some of it we see every day. A huge increase in families having to use food banks, including many people working in health and social care. Energy bills so huge, people are struggling to pay. And at the same time, Shell announces massive profits of over 32 billion. The inequality now in this country and in the East Midlands is absolutely shocking and appalling. School budgets are stretched beyond what's safe and reasonable for our children to stay safe, happy and learning. And of course, I agree with, I'm sure, everybody else in this chamber, something that affects everyone every day, the appalling state of our roads and pavements, causing injury and damage to people, cars and bikes. There's one extra thing that I think is bad news is I understand that the eastern leg of HS2 is about to be scrapped. Perhaps you can enlighten us on that, Councillor Bradley. It's not going to do an awful lot for our economy, is it? So, to boast about it being a good settlement compared to other councils, other councils may be true, I don't know. But if it is true, then I dread to think how the majority of this country is going to make ends meet when you say that Nottingham is one of the best funded. And you talked about pay, Councillor Jackson, and you said it's been the highest, I think, settlement for a long while or on offer. It may well be, but some of those who are actually in social care jobs can still earn more working at Aldi. Okay, so and I just want to make it clear at this stage, this is no criticism of Nigel and Keith, who've been very helpful to make us understand the budget, or any officers or staff. We know that staff are working very hard despite the huge constraints. So if you want to hear the truth of how bad the situation is and don't want to believe me, listen to some of the experts. First, the independent review of children's social care by the much respected Just McAllister that Councillor Taylor just referred to. Here are some of the conclusions. There is currently a lack of national direction about the purpose of children's social care, and national government involvement is uneven. But the costs of inaction are too high. The time for a reset is now, and there is not a moment to lose. The white paper that followed was encouraging. I thought, hooray, something's actually going to happen here, but now that seems to have been largely shelved. And as for the government's latest response, was also referred to by Councillor Taylor, it shows nowhere near the urgency and resources needed to support our children in need of care and with special needs set out in the McAllister report. Here's just one example from that government paper. Mission 1 is his first mission. By 2027, every care experienced child and young person will feel they have strong, loving relationships in place. That is 4 years away. That's an awful long time for those children in the care system right now, and those babies about to be born and may be at risk. Next, adult social care. Sarah Clinton, the ADAS president, told us at the LG conference last June that more than 500,000 people are now waiting for social care reviews, and there is a £10 billion gap in social care budgets across all councils. Sarah also said, with reference to the government's so-called social care reforms, this is not going to fix adult social care. Let's not kid ourselves. And I heard Jeremy Hunt argue at more than one county council network conference that social care needs a proper professional career structure as exists in health, and that social care staff need the status and pay they deserve. And it seems to have gone a little bit quiet on that now, but across the country, including here in Nottinghamshire, we have all become very aware that there continues to be a huge problem in recruiting and retaining staff, which is bound to have a negative impact on a service delivery, and of course a lot of that comes down to pay. And is the integrated care system going to solve it? Not yet, according to John Doddy. I'm going to quote you now, Councillor Doddy, at the IC Partnership meeting in December when he described the current system, and I'm quoting here, fragmented and gridlocked with an illusion of a joined-up service. I think all involved would agree, so there's no real regular resources coming yet for a sustainable and long-term solution for social care, and there's not a plan yet that will work for our residents. So there'll be no regular funds available for a while to get elderly people out of hospital with a decent care package. And again, this council needs more funding, better paid social care staff, and a bigger say in how services are delivered if the ICS is going to work for the benefit of our citizens. Now, a letter from National Employers for Local Government Services to Chief Executives and employer organisations, dated December 2022, and I quote, "The national employers wholeheartedly support the national living wage, but need to make it clear that in meeting the costs of this policy, additional funding from central government is required. If this is not forthcoming, jobs and services will be at risk as employers struggle to accommodate this additional costs when trying to balance their budgets." Now, a quick look at the economy. Liz Truss's latest pronouncements just show how deluded, actually cruel she is. She completely trashed our economy and admits absolutely no responsibility for it. She's now blaming on left-wing economists, that's novel, that are wielding the power. I'd be surprised, to be honest, but if that's true, they haven't had a lot of impact. Clearly, that's just rubbish. Okay. Now, Lord Gavin Barwell, Theresa May's chief of staff, spoke at the CCN conference last year. He talked about an unprecedented fall in living standards, and I quote, If the Conservatives lose the next election, Labour will have to make the cut. That sounds really familiar. Again, there's no urgency. Leave it for Labour to sort out the Tory mess. And Liz Truss's actions were not just as stupid. And Liz Truss actions are not just a stupid and cruel experiment that we can now forget. As a direct consequence, many people are facing huge mortgage increases, and others now have pensions affected by it. Yeah. These people who worked hard all their lives and now are living on a smaller pension than they'd hoped for the rest of their lives. That's an appalling way to treat people, and you can't blame all of that on COVID and on the war in Ukraine. And perhaps just think for a moment about what's going on in Ukraine at the moment still.
That's okay.
The simple fact is that there is nowhere near enough money in our budget to deliver the services our residents and businesses need and deserve. The Conservative government has so little regard for and trust in council services that it hands out pots of money with massive strings attached, and that will only get worse once the combined authority is established. Real change will only happen if Labour win the next election, and bring it on.
Thank you, Councillor Fole. Councillor Cameronelli.
I'm wearing two hats today. Firstly, I'm supporting Councillor Jackson in my capacity as Deputy Cabinet Member for Finance, and I'll be speaking out about our economic development work in Councillor Girling's absence. As Richard said earlier today regarding the East Midlands devolution deal, the successful position of Nottinghamshire as a place to do business is vital to the future financial well-being of this county, this council, its residents and its services, to deliver more jobs, more tax income and business rate revenue. We need small business starting up and expanding rapidly. We need more large companies moving here and staying here, giving Nottinghamshire the greatest possible national and international profile. We need ever-growing numbers of people visiting our towns and villages and spending money here. To get this economic development ball rolling quicker, we have to invest in our infrastructure, become more self-sufficient and rely less on central government funding to prime our growth. Maximising independence is a phrase that we've come to associate with social care, but it's equally important to maximise our economic independence too. Prosperity is vital, we all know that. Nowhere more so than in my hometown of Mansfield and Warsaw. We have often felt overlooked and neglected in the past, but now we have a very bright and promising future, thanks in no small part to a very proactive and energetic local MP. But don't tell him it might make him big-headed. Chairman, I promised our business managers today that I wouldn't get too Mansfield-centric with this presentation, because, as he rightly points out, I'm here and we're here to consider the interest of the whole county. So, taking Councillor Barnfather's words to heart, let me start by discussing the new Lyndhurst development in Mansfield. A new £3 million link road funded by D2N2 was opened last year to support this exciting £250 million development. This 480 acres high employment site is being built on the southern edge of Mansfield, which is in my division. It was constructed to provide access to a central area that will include shops, a health centre, a new primary school, nursery, care homes and offices. Other amenities will include a community park and other green spaces, a hotel, a petrol station and roadside catering. Lyndhurst was identified as an excellent opportunity by the Nottinghamshire County Council investing in Nottinghamshire programme 4 years ago. This development will unlock over 1,700 new homes and create hundreds of new jobs. So I'm delighted to see this progress in Mansfield. Conservatives getting things done. Right. We shouldn't be embarrassed about building new. Hold on. We shouldn't be embarrassed about building new roads or improving existing ones. If you want to get your roads fixed, do the job you paid for. Your county councillors sort them out. Right. The council is committed to environmentally friendly travel options such as walking, cycling and public transport. However, having a good quality major road network is still essential to improve access to jobs, services and facilities. Creating new roads means staying within our green agenda. In fact, it's one way of supporting it because better roads help residents travel more easily and businesses move goods from A to B more quickly and efficiently, especially in areas where other transport options aren't available. For example, the £49 million Gedling Access Road, having opened to traffic only last year, is providing a better route for over 7,000 vehicles a day, reducing traffic and pollution on nearby local roads, and the project has also included the planting of six hectares of new woodland. I'm used to acres, by the way. The long overdue package of junction improvements along the A614, A6097 is well needed, including Ollerton and Loudon. This will reduce congestion, unlock development sites, and encourage even further investment in Nottinghamshire. And we are also preparing design options for the Kelham Bridge bypass, if anybody's been up that way before, which is needed to alleviate the problems caused by the historic narrow road bridge at the village near Newark. Yeah, that's Conservatives getting things done. As well as championing new roads, we are still determined to lobby for the much-needed Robin Hood Line extension, which when open will extend options for rail passengers Shirebrook and Alton via Warsop and Edwinstowe. This was identified as the priority along with the Maid Marian line in the government's integrated rail plan. We are currently commissioning an updated business case to secure this financial support. Ambitious road and rail infrastructure investment is a vital part of the economic transition plan agreed upon by the EDAM committee's last meeting before the cabinet system change last April. Our aim, looking towards the next year and beyond, is to help Nottinghamshire's business base recover from the impact of COVID and inflation and prepare for future change and opportunities. We are going to make success measurable by linking outcomes to specific key performance indicators, supported by detailed action and delivery plans monitored by the relevant cabinet members and scrutiny. Yeah, fraudulent slip.
Keep going, Andre.
As the cabinet member Councillor Gurney wrote in a newspaper column last year, we are, and I quote, we are aware of the challenges that face local communities and business in recent times. Still, we are determined to deliver our Nottinghamshire plan ambition for a healthy, prosperous, greener Nottinghamshire. We agreed last March to extend our local growth hubs initiative, a government-led project that provides Nottinghamshire businesses with a one-stop shop support and advice, which was particularly valuable in the immediate aftermath of the COVID pandemic. With an investment of over £67,000 from the Economic Development Initiative budget in the current year, and it will be topped up with a further £17,500 investment in the coming year. Conservative getting things done. Councillor Adair mentioned the importance of good broadband connectivity for residents and businesses alike, and I'm delighted to announce that we will be improving this service even further. An opportunity has been identified to improve mobile connectivity across the county by installing small cell technology on our street furniture and working together with various mobile network operators. This would involve leasing our street furniture, usually lampposts, to host these small cells at £300 per asset. This means that as well as helping make Wi-Fi more reliable, we will bring a small amount of additional income into the council by leasing out the location of our assets. Another win-win outcome for the tax and business ratepayers. Conservatives getting things done. Right. In terms of the bigger picture, we will continue to seeking to maximise the infrastructure of Nottinghamshire. We've got the East Midlands Freeport, the East Midlands Development Corporation, and recently announced the prototype fusion energy plant at West Burton. Speaking of which, Chairman, it's probably a good thing Councillor Girling isn't in the chamber today, because every time you mention the word step fusion, gets him jumping up and down with excitement. It would take you more than 10 minutes to shut him up. I know that. Joking apart, there is every reason to be excited. Right? Billions of pounds worth of investment and thousands of jobs will be coming to Nottinghamshire after we've been chosen from 15 other competitors to be the first site in the world, right, to develop a commercial power station that will use the energy produced by fusion reactions to generate electricity. Think about that. Right. West Burton A near Retford will host this ambitious project led by the UK Atomic Energy Authority. The project will seek to deliver an inherently safe and virtually limitless source of clean electricity by copying the process from the power of the sun. Think about that. Ooh. Conservatives getting things done. No, right. It is sensational, groundbreaking stuff with the potential to change the world. It will change the world if they do it. Think about it, and it's going to happen right here in Nottinghamshire, and it will happen, Mr. Chairman. By putting all these terrific plans together, we can look forward to a truly exciting and, may I say, electrifying time for Nottinghamshire and its residents. And today's budget will ensure that this council continues to be in the proper financial position to take full advantage of these opportunities for the benefit of our people. That's why I'll be voting for it today. Thank you.
Go on, Andre. Thank you, Councillor Camilleri. Councillor Helen Ann Smith.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, one of the biggest things that we hear from the voluntary sector at the moment is that they need more funding. During the COVID pandemic, I think everyone in this room praised the great work of our voluntary sector across Nottinghamshire. If it wasn't for some of that great work from those volunteers, a lot of people wouldn't have been able to get the support that they needed during the pandemic. Mr. Chairman, food banks and food share schemes have been a major topic of discussion recently, even though there's some people that believe food banks aren't needed. And quite honestly, Mr. Chairman, I think they're deluded. Mr. Chairman, quite a lot of members in this chamber have given money to food banks because they see the need for and the relevance of food banks and the great work that they do. And they've used their CDF for this. Mr. Chairman, I'd love to be able to say that we don't need services like food banks or warm rooms, but unfortunately, in this day and age, we do. We need them so much, especially in communities like ours, where they have got high levels of deprivation. Mr. Chairman, by reducing the amount of money within the CDF fund, we're saying that not all of these voluntary groups and services are important. Mr. Chairman, I'm not going to speak for long, it's very short and sweet. But as my colleague Councillor Waters said, how do we choose who will and who won't get funding next year? So I ask you, should we stop supporting food banks, food share schemes, warm rooms? Should we stop supporting organisations like Scouts, Brownies and Guides that help some of our young people progress in life? Or do we stop supporting groups like the Ashfield Play Forum or the Tempsall Visitor Centre that provide vital services for free to some of our most deprived areas? Mr. Chairman, by reducing the allocation within the CDF fund, we're reducing the opportunities for some of the most deprived areas in Nottinghamshire. And I cannot support anything that cuts funding to the voluntary sector when the amount of good work that they do for our residents is unmistakable. If it wasn't for those groups, if it wasn't for those volunteers, if it wasn't for their determination, a lot of people would have been lonely, had no one to talk to, had no support during the pandemic. We're praising them, but now we're saying, you did a really good job, but we can't fund you anymore. To me, I can't support that. So I will be supporting the amendment put by the Independent Alliance. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Pringle.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, firstly, I'd like to offer my sincere thoughts to the families affected by the earthquakes in Turkey and Syria, as I'm sure we all repeat that. Also, applaud Nigel, 151 officer, and the finance team. We know how critical they are to this council, certainly in the present times. We appreciate everything that we do, and I think that's across from all parties here. Councillor Jackson, you and your members have introduced 95% of the precept available to you, whilst glorifying a 5% figure below the maximum possible at a time when the burden of simply living is shouldered by our residents. You then applaud yourself by removing unfilled employment places, which you claim a £2 million saving for. What a failed, shallow view of service provision, responsibility, which will now be shouldered by existing staff. The exacerbation of burden and responsibility of the cost of living crisis on our residents reflects itself in the increase in recognised mental health and all the issues that go along with that. I was pleased to hear you reference the 300 million of reduced budgets and efficiency savings enforced on us by your government. What I didn't hear was a comment recognising this as a direct failure by your government at a time. I assume you and therefore I assume you favour your government's attack on Nottinghamshire. You will, I'm sure, reference your unexpected 11 million extra you received, but again, that equates to an annual deficit of this year 289 million. If we recognise the pressures forced on our residents, then we should also recognise the shocking pressures facing our NHS service and the failure of a social care system available to help out as they need to. However, we could have helped, but you took the decision to close our care facilities, the impact of which is now recognised as a complete failure in future vision. Well, you did. Don't push it, Ed. You were part of that. Prevention is better than cure. Your words today, Councillor Jackson. Now take responsibility for your failure. I've listened today to an alternative budget which supports 95% of the budget you delivered today. And then I heard speeches by the independents that don't want to support you because there's a 5% difference. I'm really struggling with that, guys. Really, really am. Well, let me just make something clear. We, the Labour group, are miles away from your government and the way they see our services. This side of the chamber recognises the devastation of our health services. That's not ignoring the excellent work of our staff continuing to provide for us under immense pressure, but we must make immediate changes to this funding policy, which is affecting care. It is not enough, the funding which we receive presently. Don't keep your eyes solely focused on the words written over the pages on your desk. Look outside into the real world and see our residents. Recognise the financial punishment they see and face. I have to ask one simple question, and I'm really struggling with this. Why are you seeing what they are seeing? Start now. Start repairing the 1 billion black hole in our finances and reverse the failure of Conservatives not getting things done. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Pringle. Councillor Wheeler, Gordon Wheeler. And mine's working. Mine's working. So, one moment. We have a technical man behind you. Members, we'll just have a quick adjournment, shall we? I can just sort the technology out.
You don't need to leave the chamber.
Yeah.
partnerships. That's new money. And what's it for? To tackle projects that directly address inequalities. And this is not money that will appear in anybody's budget. This is not money that will actually be ticked off anywhere, but it's going right into the areas that we wanted to do. The ICS and the ICP have three guiding principles: reduce inequality, system by default, and a third one which has just escaped my mind as I stand here. In any case, we're going to move on, and what I'm going to say is that what we've done over the last year has defied my greatest expectations. I came here in 2012. One of the biggest changes that ever existed was the introduction of health and wellbeing boards and the movement of public health into county councils. In 2022, with the new integration bill, with the establishment of the ICS, I have seen the greatest movement in NHS and social care since I've been here. I've seen greater cooperation, greater understanding, particularly over COVID when we all got together and tackled the sheer challenges that exist there. Now, speaking of COVID, the Health and Wellbeing Board have each month been producing a COVID impact assessment, and the last one was on nothing more than mental health. What we showed was that when I started, 1 in 10 children had a mental health problem. Now it's 1 in 4. But the council has responded remarkably well. We have developed a Not Alone website. This is a website that's admired throughout the country, an award-winning website for children to go on and to look at the problems that they've got, and we're soon going to be expanding it to adults. We have in CAMS one of the best service that exists anywhere for childhood mental health problems, with now direct access and increased appointments. One of the big things that increased during COVID was eating disorders, and anorexia nervosa is the biggest psychological killer in the entirety of childhood. 1 in 10 people who develop it die, and we have the best eating disorders unit that I've ever had the privilege to utilise. So not only have we got the problems of COVID, but we're also acting really effectively to deal with those things. One of the things I'm most proud of is the fact that we are moving forward to be a smoking-free council. Now you may think, how does that impact the budget? Because the budget is all about saving money, and the ICS and the ICP are all about prevention. And I put forward at a meeting that we could be smoke-free by 2035. New Zealand, they have banned everybody over the age born after 2008 from buying cigarettes. They've increased taxes and they've increased vaping, and they're going to be smoke-free by 2025. In 3 years' time, the whole of New Zealand will have less than 5% of people smoking. Smoking and cigarettes. A cigarette kills 50% of all the people who use cigarettes die from the impact of it. That's how big it is. So we don't need the greatest fusion technology in the world. Although, Councillor Garland, you mentioned fusion and Star Trek. Star Trek was lithium crystals. Nothing to do with fusion. Um, dilithium crystals.
I've told him this 5 times today.
How we could do with those today. So in any case, smoking, we're going to be a smoking free. And how is that going to come about? Is the pressure of the Public Health Department requiring vaping to be an offer that we give through Change Grow Live to the smoking cessation program, and that has taken a hell of a lot of work. We're swapping something that kills 50% of the people who use it for something that's 95% safer. So throughout the whole of the last year and looking forward into the next year, I can say that the intangibles, I can say that the things working together in cooperation with our other partners, developing the health and well-being of the people of Nottinghamshire, and particularly place-based partnerships where we are working in every single one of your communities to develop something new, something that never existed before. This is completely unique. So you can see the problems, or you can actually see some of the most fantastic things that have been going on since I've come into this council, and I choose to see those fantastic things that are going on. So all I'm going to do is to say congratulations to the people who keep the council fiscally right, so I can actually get on with the things that I enjoy doing and keeping the population fit and healthy going forward. Now, Councillor Henshaw mentioned that the population in the age life expectancy is going down a little bit. But I think that started with the obesity increase, and most of the public health consultants and experts in it would say that that's been a trend that's been going on for a number of years now, and probably linked to obesity rather than COVID in itself. So all I'm going to do is say thank you, Councillor Jackson, for your budget. The health and well-being of Nottinghamshire is one admired around England, and people look to us and say, what are Nottingham doing? And then they try to follow us because of the speed at which we've moved with these new changes. So I'm immensely proud of what we're achieving through health and wellbeing in the county council. And sometimes we've got to stand up and shout out about the things we do really well and the things we're really pleased with and really happy with. And I can honestly say that is health and wellbeing, and that's what we're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Doddy. Councillor Payne.
Thank you very much.
It's past the microphone, Councillor Payne.
Can I just start by associating myself with the comments about the awful tragedy in Syria and Turkey? And let me just begin, Mr. Chairman, by saying that today is our annual budget council, and let me put on record my thanks to every single member of staff that works for this council. My interactions with every single member of staff in any piece of casework or issue that I have pursued have always been incredibly positive. Today in this chamber, we are debating competing visions about this council, and the comments I'm about to make are about those competing political visions for this council and for this county. They are in no way a reflection on the merits or otherwise of our members of staff. And let me particularly single out Nigel Stevenson and Keith Palfreyman and the wider finance team for the support they've given every single group in preparing their budgets, alternative budgets, and comments that are being made here in the chamber today. Mr. Chairman, the truth is, the budget that is being presented to us today is a standstill budget in a standstill Britain. Broken roads in a broken country, broken promises in a broken economy. And Richard Jackson started today by telling us that the old-fashioned Labour way in this chamber was to whack up council tax and kick the savings down the road. I have to tell you, Councillor Jackson, pick up a mirror and look in it, because that's exactly what you're doing in this year's budget. 49.7 million used in reserves. Councillor Barney talked about petrol being poured on the flames. Never mind petrol being poured on the flames. You may as well be driving an oil tanker in and setting light to it in terms of the council's reserves. £49.7 million being used in reserves over the life of your medium-term financial plan, and you can use it once. It's in your figures, it's what you're arguing for, and it's £30 million more than the projected amount of use of reserves that you set in your budget last year. So we'll take no lectures about burning reserves while you're stood on a burning platform, because from the government, yet again, we've had a 1 year settlement instead of a multi-year settlement. We've had a fair funding review kicked down the road, and we've had £15 billion taken out of local government over the last 10 years. Councillor Camilleri, I think that's called Conservatives not getting things done. And you know, what's particularly galling about this, if you look in today's budget, there are so many burning injustices in this country at the moment. Wherever you stand on the political spectrum, anybody looking outside in the real world at the moment, outside of the political debate and Yahoo in this chamber, will see that this country is struggling, that our county is struggling. But today, what we've heard from the chamber opposite has sounded like the oration of an Excel spreadsheet. Where are the values? Where are the solutions? Where's the passion? Where are the ideas to take our county forward? We haven't heard any. And on social care, what have we heard? We've heard in this budget paper that one of the biggest demands, one of the biggest pressures on this budget is an increasing demand in social care. And why? 13 years of a Tory government, 5 prime ministers, 5 different administrations, 5 different promises to sort out the problem around social care, and still there has been no answer delivered. And what's particularly sad, and this hasn't just been driven by the party opposite, but in large it has been driven by the party opposite is that the debate around social care has become a reductionist debate. It's always centred around how social care can prop up the NHS. We always talk about beds instead of people. We always talk about it being a drain on healthcare instead of it being an investment in healthcare. And it was incredibly revealing later in today's debate, Councillor Barney. There are a few things I agree with you on, and you should be commended for the way that you presented your argument today. But you showed the true difference between your side of the chamber and this side of the chamber today in trying to distance yourself from the Ashfield Independents. You said in responding about the council's estates, and I quote, that Councillor Oliver, when we're making decisions about buildings and estates in this council, they are entirely driven by pounds and pennies, were your words. The price of everything, the value of nothing. And if this administration were in charge, if Councillor Foll were the leader of the council, we would be
Point of
making...
clarification. I didn't say that. I said that's what businesses do, and I said that's exactly what we don't do.
No, that's you. No. Listen back to...
And the point of clarification as well.
Listen back
We
to the
need to
record.
work together because we've got to solve these problems that are bigger than politics. They've not been resolved by the left or the right for 50 years.
Councillor
Councillor
Barney,
Barney,
listen
thank
back
you.
to the record, and you'll be able to hear what you said. The difference between your
Members, please,
the
let's
difference
listen to the debate.
the difference between your side and our side is that decisions on your side are entirely based around pounds and pennies and who can pay the most. Decisions on our side would be centred on people, the people we are here to represent. And what's particularly galling when Councillor Jackson stands up and says, we haven't really levied the maximum amount of council tax. I mean, any right-thinking person, Richard, looking at this, can see there ain't much difference between 95% level of council tax and 100%. So pull another one. What the residents do know when I speak to them on the doors in Gedling is, over the last 6 years of this Tory administration at County Hall, you have increased council tax for a Band D property by £371.59, and our roads and pavements are crumbling. Drive up Westdale Lane, drive up Arnold Lane, drive up Shearing Hill, drive down Nottingham Road, drive down High Street, and the repairs are shoddy. The £371.59 you have taken out the back pockets of residents in Gedling and in Nottinghamshire, you may as well have stuffed down the drain. That's if the drain weren't blocked, Councillor Jackson, because you're not even getting round and solving those problems either. And if you'll allow me, Mr. Chairman, just to be parochial for a moment, it was really galling, and she's not in the chamber, to hear Councillor Taylor talking about schools' investment programme earlier. And I looked down here, sent here by Gedling residents, to see what's in this for Gedling. And I'll give you credit, there's been some investment in the Rivendell School, and that should be incredibly welcomed in the Trent Valley area of our borough. A few years ago, you'll remember a heated debate in this chamber that then went out into the media, led by Councillor Owen, where he accused me and the former MP for Gedling, Mr. Vernon Coker, of Labour scaremongering about the lack of secondary school places in Gedling. He said it simply wasn't true. He'll be very surprised then to know that a letter's been sent by the County Council on the 10th of January to Gedling Borough Council, to Keepmoat Homes and to Home England, where the promise they made to build a new primary school on the Chase Farm development in the centre of Gedling has now been totally reneged on by this county council. Yet another broken promise to the parents and families in Gedling. And what's the reason that's given, Councillor Owen? Because somebody was right in the debate a few years ago and somebody was wrong. The reason given, and I quote in black and white from the county council, is because there is a lack of secondary school places in the locality. Perhaps Councillor Owen might like to get up before the end of this debate and apologise to me, and apologise to Mr. Coker, and apologise particularly, Mr. Owen, a few years ago, for castigating the parents and families who argued for investment in secondary schools when you told them that they were wrong. This budget is totally lacking in ambition. This country is falling apart at the seams after 13 long years of a Tory government and 6 incredibly long years of this administration. Social care failing, a fair funding review kicked down the road, local government being torn apart, £1 billion taken out of the county council, the budget in one single year of agency nurses for the entire NHS, stripped out of county council funding. You can't get an ambulance, you can't get an NHS dentist, you can't go and see a doctor, you can't live independently because social care is falling apart. And in 90 short days' time, in the local elections in this county, there will be a competing vision on the ballot. It will be a change in the country that is coming round the corner when the general election comes, or it'll be more of the drab same that we've heard today. And let me just say this to you, Councillor Oliver, when you stand here and say that there's no difference between Labour and the Tories in this chamber, I have a message for you as the Ashfield Independents. When that general election comes, there won't be a candidate for a Prime Minister from the Ashfield Independents, and I don't think for one
Point of
second
clarification.
and I don't think for 1 second you're going to get 326 seats in the House of Commons. If the people of Nottinghamshire and the UK
Point of
want to get
clarification.
rid of this Tory government, there's one way to do it: vote Labour.
Thank you, Councillor Payne.
I would just like to point out I'm not an Ashfield Independent. I'm a part of the Independent Alliance, and I sit independently.
Councillor Barney.
Sorry, I've got a point of clarification to be clear.
Members, please. Councillor Barney, quickly.
To be clear, point of clarification, what I actually said, and I think it is important to make the point because it breaks what I'm trying to do every time I speak in this chamber. These issues are massive. We've got to work together. They're bigger than the left and right. This is about how we resolve these crises for all of our families and individuals. I said this. I've been through the budgetary process in business many times where the only driver is what makes sense purely to the bottom line in pounds and pence. But the process we have been through in this budgetary exercise has been deeply considered, with each portfolio holder being given the opportunity time and again to shape the outcomes. That's exactly what I said. No, it's a great shame. Punch and Judy is what you say, when what matters is people's lives. Let's grow up in this chamber.
Members, thank you. We'll move back on to the debate. I will remind the speaker that your microphones are now working, and so we are now live streaming. Councillor Philip Owen.
Philip.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's been a lot of talk about the Councillors' Divisional Fund today. The responsibility and the remit for the Councillors' Divisional Fund lies with the Governance and Ethics Committee, although you'll see in the budget book it is ascribed to the Deputy Leader. Now, I don't know whether that's an attempt at a power grab or an attempt to justify his existence, but neither of which I think I want to dwell on. Despite the proposed changes to the Councillors' Divisional Fund, it remains an extremely generous component of our budget. Certainly it's generous in comparison with many other authorities, and it'll come as no great surprise to you, Chairman, to know that I've got a little list here of other authorities, and I'll just read one or two out with your permission. Somerset, their CDF, they don't have any. East Sussex, no such grant fund here. Leicestershire, we had a scheme but got rid of it. West Northamptonshire, no. Cumbria, no. Herefordshire, no. But the leader of Herefordshire would like to introduce a scheme, but he can't make up his mind where he's going to make spending reductions elsewhere. So I don't think that will go ahead. Cambridgeshire, no. Shropshire, no. West Sussex, no. Central Bedfordshire, £2,000. So you can see that our scheme is remaining fairly generous. And it was only a few weeks ago that we had a look at the scheme in its entirety because we wanted to bring it up to current standards. And the scheme, as we approved at committee, was, I believe, approved unanimously. Don't think there are any objections to it. And it's designed for small one-off grants That's the idea behind it. A flexible means for councillors to assist local groups to towards running costs now, if you want to do that on a short-term basis, or to buy additional materials. It's not intended as a regular funding stream. And councillors opposite say, oh, what am I going to do? How will I make the decisions? Well, that's what being in politics is all about, making decisions. And if you can't make decisions, then get out of politics. It's as simple as that. I have not the slightest doubt that within the very generous allowance of £3,000, you will still be able to continue to help your local groups in a way that has always happened in the past. But I take particular exception to the faux outrage of Councillor Carr earlier on today. And I really do look forward to Broxtowe Borough Council's budget meeting, when I have not the slightest doubt, because he's deputy leader there, unfortunately, I have not the slightest doubt that he will be introducing a scheme for ward members to hand out money to local groups, because he feels so passionately about it. Because at the moment, after 3.5 years of Labour Liberal control there, we don't have such a scheme. That's how passionately he feels about it. On the larger picture of the budget, now there are groans coming because they're wondering what I'm going to say. On the larger picture of the budget, that would be difficult following you, Councillor Carr. On the broader picture of the budget, listening to what members have had to say on both sides, I think we can say that the budget is really a stunningly successful budget. A stunningly successful budget. We've not had much in the way of alternatives. We have been told about the level of service provision that's going to be continuing and enhanced in many cases. And at the same time, we are no longer going to be the top charging, top levying local authority. Now, if you'd have said that a few years ago, we would have all thought it was impossible. But that is the level of achievement built on the success of what's happened, not just this last year or 18 months, but on the last 5 or 6 years and before that, from 2009 to 2013, under Councillor Adair's stewardship of finance when we took over. That's been the remarkable turnaround. We are able to provide and continue with high-level services, and at the same time, we are no longer the top charging authority, and we haven't got to charge the maximum amount. We're criticised for that. But of course, the only thing really that's thrown against us is the state of the roads and pavements. Well, of course, it's a Forth Bridge job. It's bound to be a Forth Bridge job. With so many roads and pavements across the county, it's an ongoing programme. And over these past few years, I certainly know in my area, there have been far more roads resurfaced, far more roads patched, far more pavements repaired and patched than ever there has been before. Now, that doesn't mean to say that everything is okay. Of course it isn't. We're going to have to continue with that work, and we will do. We've got a budget, and I look forward to hearing from Councillor Clark very shortly just how many more roads and pavements in Kimberley and Nuttall is going to resurface over this next year, because I'm sure he will. The only thing we get from the whatever they're called group over there, and they seem to change their names quite regularly, well, in their position, so would I as well. The only thing we get from them are potholes. In fact, I've seen more pictures in the papers of potholes with an Ashfield, whatever they're called, member at the side of it than anything else. The pothole is usually the more photogenic, but there we are. I can't see anything rude in telling the truth. What's wrong with that? Of course there will be potholes. I find potholes, my constituents find potholes, and they get on to me and say, what are you going to do about it? So I get in touch. I get in touch with the area manager, and they fill them up. They fill them up, and then they do patching later on. I must be getting it wrong somewhere. I suppose I ought to go and have a photograph taken. At least I would look more photogenic than the pothole. But I don't. I get on and do the job for which I'm elected and don't make a fuss about it. And that's what we should all be doing.
We do.
Well, the better councillors do. Those that are more interested in headlines go and have their photographs taken. It really is pathetic to see it.
Absolutely.
You know, the investment in our roads is improving, and our roads and pavements are improving, but we know they're not perfect. The amendment that's come forward to keep this old building inefficient, both in usage, in heating costs, and everything else, because it's a monument. It's a monument on the banks of the Trent. When I drove in this morning and parked in the car parking space there, the vast acres around me, I thought to myself, well, this parking space in terms of real estate is worth more than my car. Because if we were to sell this building, as perhaps I think we might do going forward, I would hope we would. You can ooh and you can ah. No decisions have been taken.
Point of clarification, Mr. Chairman, please. Point of clarification. The
One
overview,
moment, Councillor Carr.
the overview and scrutiny committee were told categorically that no decision about County Hall has been
That's
made.
just what I've said. My personal view is I hope we get rid of it because it's a liability. And if we can move into a new building that's energy efficient and going to save us over £1 million a year in running costs, what's not to like about that? So this is a budget going forward for success. It's a stunning budget that we're able to build on solid foundations, and I commend it to everyone.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Councillor Walsh, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to start just by talking briefly about the amendment that's been put forward. In a lot of speeches I've heard with the Ashford Independents, you've got up and said what you've produced is a budget. You haven't produced a budget, you've produced an amendment. And when you produce an amendment, if every single person in this council chamber supports that amendment, it means we're supporting the rest of the budget that is in this book. That's what happens when you produce an amendment. So I'm very disappointed that the Ashfield Independents are supporting 98% of the Conservative budget. That's what happens when you put through an amendment. That's a fact. That's what happens. Independent Coalition, the Alliance. It will be no surprise to know that I'm not supporting the Conservative budget. Yes, our roads are crumbling. They are none more so in Arnold South, and if anyone wants to suggest that I don't contact on a regular basis about roads in Arnold South, I'll challenge them on that. I can't tell you how much they have backtracked on vital roads, including Westdale Lane, Councillor Clark, that was due to take place in August and has been cancelled once again. So yes, our roads are crumbling, but so of our communities. So I'm going to take a step back. Let's get reality back into the room, because we've heard some wonderful stories about health and social care, and Councillor Doddy talking about all this new money that's coming into our health service and our NHS. We talked about the programme that was on Channel 4 in A&E, which shows our fantastic staff in A&E. Let's have a rewind a little bit. Go to A&E last night. If you went to A&E in NUH last night, I can tell you something now. It is a very, very different story to what is on that programme. Go to A&E in NUH last week, 2 weeks, a month ago. I have to wait outside because I can't go in with my father that's got a terminal illness and see how he is treated in our hospitals in Nottinghamshire. And I can tell you something now, it is an utter, utter disgrace. It is an utter, utter disgrace. So anybody here that wants to talk about the fact that our NHS has got lots more money and we're tackling all these inequalities, where are we tackling inequalities for a man that has worked all his life? A good, honest man that is shoved on a corridor and left for hours and hours and hours and hours. Because that's the reality in health and that's the reality in our hospitals. The budget, for me, and I already know that Councillor Taylor's going to glare at me and disagree, the budget, for me, categorically fails to recognise the impact of the pandemic on children and young people in Nottinghamshire. There is a growing number of children living in poverty in Nottinghamshire. The Ashford Independent say one of the greatest indicators of child poverty is free school meals. It's not. Go to the ONS site. It tells you the reality with regards to what child poverty is. And it's over 22,000 children living in poverty in Nottinghamshire, which actually in Ashfield and Mansfield, they're the highest at the moment that they have ever been on record. Ever been. Children living in poverty. I asked for a post-pandemic plan for children and young people. I've still not seen it. I've asked for extra investment in early years for language development. And what has happened? What has happened without this investment? It's not just me saying this. Amanda Spielman, Chief Inspector of Ofsted, only a couple of months ago has produced her annual Ofsted report. And what has she said about education in this country from the Ofsted inspections that have taken place, including here in Nottinghamshire? There is a shadow cast by the pandemic over education. In every single area of that report, which I'm assuming you've read, Councillor Taylor, in every single area of that report, from early years to children entering year 7, where it's actually having the biggest impact. I always thought it's going to be down in early years of language development. That is bad. But actually, secondary schools are saying year 6s, when they're going into year 7, starting school, they're having to go back. There's a huge problem. Where is the plan? When are we, as a local authority, and don't tell me we're not in charge of schools, we have a responsibility towards children and young people in this school. The best route out of poverty, and my mum and dad have always said this to me, the best route out of poverty, because I didn't come from much, I was the first person in my family to go to university. The best route out of poverty, my mum and dad told me, is to work hard and go to and get a good education. Right? That's what you've got to do. Well, no. That is the best route out of poverty. In our most disadvantaged areas, where child poverty is going up, in Sherwood, in Mansfield, in Ashfield, and actually even in some of our more wealthier areas, including Rushcliffe and Gedling, children are being failed. And this shadow cast by the pandemic will continue and get greater, and it'll get darker and darker and darker for children and young people. The children's centre service, the family hubs, however you want to address it, is not good enough. It is not good enough. There are women that have had babies, and I keep saying it, the women that had babies during the pandemic that still haven't seen a health visitor face to face, that are still having appointments and assessments over the phone. Now, not only is that a massive safeguarding issue, but it's absolutely deplorable. Absolutely, and we should be ashamed. Actually ashamed. So let's bring some reality back into the room. The reality for people across Nottinghamshire. Mortgages up, rent up, food bills up, child poverty up, heating bills up. More people than ever accessing food banks, child poverty on the rise, health inequalities rising with life expectancy getting greater. Let's not forget there's already a 7.5 years difference between the south of Nottinghamshire to the north of Nottinghamshire. So why, oh why, is this budget devoid of any real solutions to what is really, really going out and happening in our communities, the communities that I see? And I'm going to stop in a moment once I've spoken a little bit about CDF, because I cannot disagree with Councillor Owen more than what I do with regards to this. And I've listened to Councillor Owen a lot over the years. As an officer, I listen to him a lot. So we just go back with regards to the CDFs. The councillors I'm talking to in the Labour group, and it might be different for you with regards over there. It might be different. But we're giving money to soup kitchens, to food banks, to warm rooms because people can't heat their houses. I'm giving it to the Good Shepherd Church, who is going out to vulnerable adults to support them. That is an indictment of what your government has done to our communities, and you're going to take away that money from our communities. It is absolutely deplorable. So I stand here today to say this is a lacklustre budget. There's no imagination in it. It doesn't do for children and young people what it needs to be doing, and obviously I won't be supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Walsh. Councillor Carlton.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak in this budget debate here today. And I rise to speak on the public health services that we as a council deploy. Whilst we still await confirmation from central government about the overall value, this year's value of the public health grant, we have made plans to sustain and strengthen our investments, delivering our statutory health improvement duties. We anticipate that grant, however, to be in the order of £43 million. As has been alluded to already by Councillor John Doddy, the key building blocks for health and well-being include getting a best start in life, education, skills, a good diet, secure employment, good housing, and relationships with family, friends, and the community. Building blocks like these can create a society where everyone can thrive. In some of our communities, these building blocks are weak and missing, which leads to the stark health disparities that we have discussed already. Nottinghamshire's Joint Strategic Needs Assessment highlights that people living in areas where these building blocks are the weakest generally die 7.5 years earlier, compared to those living in areas where they are the strongest. Furthermore, on average, they have spent an additional 14 years living in ill health. Where that building block is missing altogether, the inequality may even be more extreme. For example, national evidence shows that the homeless people have an average life expectancy of 43 years, compared to the 78 years for the general population. We equally know that these health disparities have been made much worse by the impacts of the pandemic, notwithstanding the pressures of the cost of living. So it falls to me to say, what have we been doing about this? And these are some of the reasons why I actually got into politics. We can subscribe to the Labour Party, we can be members of the Conservative Party or party of whatever over in the corner. But we all actually come into this for the very right reasons. Yes, our directions of travel might actually be a little bit different, but I'd actually like to think sometimes we all have got that same destination of where we actually want to go. So, and I'm actually pleased that Councillor Wilmot is in his seat, because it was a question that he asked at November's Health and Wellbeing Board about what we were doing. So let me take this opportunity to remind Council of what has happened. Chairman, you'll recall on the 14th of November, Councillor Barney approved the recommendation to invest £700,000 of uncommitted public health reserves into supporting our residents across Nottinghamshire at this time of financial challenge across the years of 23 and 24. To remind Council of how these monies are being deployed, it breaks down as follows. 450,000 for the cost of living community grants addressing food insecurity and grants for the charitable and voluntary sectors. £100,000 for scaling up the size and scope of the Council's existing provision for benefits advice, information and guidance. £150,000 invested into the Nottinghamshire Energy Partnership Fuel Poverty Programme. A lot of this work began last summer because we could see what was coming. We got ready, and I know in a couple of weeks that Councillor Cottier will start making the first decisions on the first tranche of funding that I just referred to. I have absolutely no doubt that supporting people, our residents most in need in their own communities is the right thing to do. By adopting a place-based approach, we can demonstrate that that money is being invested into the areas where it is needed most. Furthermore, cast your minds back to the first Cabinet meeting of this new governance arrangements. Cabinet approved a decision to lay out a longer-term ambition in the coming years of committing further public health funds to the value of £4.9 million to help improve the health and well-being of our residents across all of Nottinghamshire. The Council's investment in the health of its population includes ensuring that our children and young people get the best start in life, creating places which enable people to live healthy lives, as well as providing services which support people wanting to exercise more control over their own health, including the people in the least advantaged communities. This is on top of the Nottinghamshire Healthy Family Programmes, where we invest £14 million. This investment prevents the escalation of health and well-being issues by identifying and acting upon opportunities to intervene early by supporting parents and carers to keep their children healthy and safe, enabling them to reach their full potential. It should also be noted that we have a statutory duty to deliver this as a universal service. Another important building block for good health, and one which avoids the escalation of problems and the future demand for other services, is our substance misuse treatment services. We continue to invest more than £8 million annually to support our residents secure good outcomes for themselves and their households. In Nottinghamshire, 12,800 people are dependent on substances, and estimates from national modelling show that there are many more thousands at risk from harm from use of alcohol or drugs. We will sustain this investment while strengthening our arrangements with further investment provided from central government for the implementation of the new National Drugs Strategy. In 2022, the government announced a new 10-year From Harm to Hope strategy. This is a long-term plan to cut crime and save lives by reducing supply and demand for drugs and delivering a high-quality treatment and recovery system, whilst achieving a generational shift in the demand for drugs. A key part of this strategy will be establishing a substance misuse partnership in Nottinghamshire. I can confirm to Council that we have now done this alongside partners from the Police and Crime Commissioner herself, DWP, the Probation Service, Change Grow Live, the ICS and NHS England. As the new chairman of the partnership, along with Councillor Barney, I will be taking our new partnership strategy to the Cabinet on the 9th of March for final approval. This strategy is backed by over £9 million in grants from government and is aimed at delivering a world-class treatment and recovery system. With these funds already committed to Nottinghamshire, I can further inform Council that as part of these funds is to deliver a housing support interventions for those who experience substance misuse and who have an identifiable housing need. I can confirm the substance misuse and housing grant is over £900,000 for this financial period. Additional to this, further grants are expected in due course as we move along with the strategy. So in summary, Chairman, in fairness, I could prattle on for a lot longer describing everything that we're doing from a public health team. However, it is without doubt that the early intervention and prevention ethos of our public health service and the outcomes it achieves by ensuring as many residents across Nottinghamshire live in good environments with a healthy lifestyle. This is the right way to proceed. We can minimise the number of people developing a long-term dependency on our services as well as that of the health service and avoid the higher costs associated with that, whilst most importantly delivering better outcome for our
residents. For me, that is the definition of a true win-win scenario. For those reasons, I support our continued increased investment in public health and the wider budget as proposed by Councillor Richard Jackson before us today. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Carlton. Councillor Neil Clark.
Thank you, Chairman. There's been a lot of ground covered today. I was going to say this afternoon, but this morning as well. And there are lots of different comments and issues to be made. But I just want to comment first of all, because it's part of the proposals and the amendment about Topwigay and about this building. And there was an inference made that the proposal had already been concluded that this building will be sold to the highest bidder. Well, that's a possible option, maybe, perhaps. But there are lots of different alternatives that have still got to be gone through, because the most important thing in relation to this is about saving money and saving running costs. And Councillor Owen mentioned about the £1 million a year in annual running costs. The reason that's, well, one of the many reasons that's important, because the amendment said don't do any of the building project, but spend £20 million on the roads, which I may possibly think, well, that's fair enough, except that if we don't make this building more efficient and deal with the problem, because it is money down the drain, there is money just disappearing, then if we don't move to an efficient building and save money, that means there won't be money available to spend on the roads. So it's important that we invest to save. So turning to highways, and I'm very grateful because we had the highway service review which took place, which was cross-party, and indeed I'm very pleased to say that nobody who were members on that review party ever voted against any of the proposals that were made. We need to remember the context that we inherited a backlog of road repairs estimated to cost £150 million to resolve. So that's a lot more. And that's why we identified investment in the highways infrastructure across the county as an important strategic objective, and have invested around £140 million in our road maintenance and renewals programme since April 2017. But we still managed expectation, or public expectation, and we must be honest with residents that this money cannot suddenly improve all our roads immediately. But in terms of the highways review, we have already implemented 85% of those recommendations. And actually, I want to thank Councillor Martin, because he actually attended 2 of those review meetings, and he was very constructive. And he said, this is not about party politics, this is about the people. So I commend him for helping us. However, when it then comes to talking about the roads, and I think, if I've misquoted, it was either Councillor Creamer or I think it was, who talked about under-delivering. Well, we haven't undelivered at all, because we've already implemented 85% of that, those improvement plans. Therefore, we are well on the way. And I've never said the roads will be perfect. What we are doing is we are making the roads better, because we are moving away from the emphasis on small pothole repairs to large patch permanent repairs. But there will always be emergency pothole repairs required. And this winter just gone, the last couple of months or so, wet and cold, has emphasised the fact that at the moment those roads, potholes, are certainly causing one heck of a challenge. In terms of, I just want to mention about saving money as well, because we invested in
LED street lighting. That is now almost complete across the whole county. We spent £4 million, not just saving the £15 million we've saved since it's implemented, Mr. Chairman, but we've also saved 90,000 tonnes of carbon. So that is reducing our carbon emissions. We're investing in new roads. The Gedling Access Road has been completed. We're investing £3 million in the Southern Relief Road around Newark. And we need to make sure that we've still got money available to invest in our infrastructure, to invest in our A roads, because there are many A roads that need attention and need improvement. And in fact, the A614 is just one of those examples where we need to be looking at ways of improving that. In terms of sorry, I just lost my place here. So buses are quite a challenge, Mr. Chairman. But what is really good is this council has stepped in to save services that are under threat. In fact, only this week there have been 11 services where operators have said they're going to stop operating those, and we have stepped in to ensure that those services can keep running. And we keep a check and we keep reviewing, and we are reviewing at the moment the bus network to see how we can best continue to serve the people of Nottinghamshire. And I'm really pleased that the Notts Bus on Demand pilot schemes have really proved successful. The feedback has been excellent, and this is a way in which we can expand those out in time, and that would help fulfill one of our ambitions to make sure that every community has access to a bus service. So that Notts Bus on Demand service will prove beneficial to some of those more isolated and rural areas in particular. But we aren't just content with those sorts of things in terms of buses, Mr. Chairman, because only yesterday, the leader and I had a meeting with the ministerial team, with the civil servants from Department for Transport, to talk about and to ask them and to discuss how we can maybe attract additional funding and converting some funding to ensure that we can get more bus services supported, and also to help us expand out the Notts Bus on Demand as well. And it was interesting just to hear the debate about Councillor's Divisional Fund. And Councillor Owen has already partly mentioned that, because it was interesting to listen to some of the comments that have been made about a reduction in the fund in the county council, which is a bit rich, Mr. Chairman, when it's coming from a lot of members of a council. So if I just quote Ashfield District Council, how much is in their councillors' fund? Zero. Nothing. They don't have anything. They used to have a community fund, and in 2021 there was £10,000 allocated. Divide that by 35 members of Ashfield District Council, that equates to £285 and 17p each member. However, there was a cabinet report in July of 2022 that said there was an underspend of £6,000, and they've now cancelled that completely. So there aren't any councillors' funds in Ashfield District Council. So it's a bit rich to receive lectures about a reduction of the funding here in this council. I did promise, I've just realised, and I realise I'm running out of time, but I did realise I would talk about footways, because highways not only includes the road surface that we drive on, but pavements as well. And as one great example, the footway between Rainworth and Blidworth, or Reneth and Blidworth, wherever you come from, has been completely restructured, and it's a footway and a cycle path So that is brand new pathway, just one example. So therefore, there is you can't claim that we are not doing anything with footways. So I think what we just need to bear in mind, Mr. Chairman, is that this council is doing an awful lot of investment, and I haven't even got time to talk about flood mitigation and other environmental issues, but we are investing to save, we are investing in the roads of Nottingham, and we're investing in the buses in Nottinghamshire. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Callahan.
Thank you. I'd just like to say I've listened to all sides today regarding the budget. However, I want to speak about the here and now for my division in Mansfield, also Ben's division. For the last 6 weeks, I've been giving my time on a Thursday morning to deliver a parenting programme for vulnerable families because there is no early intervention. That word frustrates the hell out of me because some of these families have been waiting 18 months for any sort of support and it isn't there. And so when we're talking about the increase in mental health for our children in schools and schools trying to manage that with a lot less budgets and everything else, it really, really does upset me. Also in our division, we've got the Stable Centre that is a food bank. It's apt to put out an SOS because it's got no food to deliver to families from all sorts, not just families that aren't working, but families that are in work. So I think we have got a budget, but we need to increase that budget for local vulnerable families, you know, and it can't go on. It can't be sustained or maintained by people's goodwill. You know, we do need the services and we need them to be active and we need them to be starting now, not in 18 months, because these families are in crisis now. Yeah. They're asking for help. And who's saying something? Because if they'd like to say it, just say it to me. Yeah?
Through the chair.
Oh, so don't tut at me, because I do help and I do support and I do lots of things over and above that what a councillor is expected to do. And I do it because, just like you, we came into it for all the right reasons to help our communities. On a Wednesday night, it's not even my division, and on a Thursday night and a Monday night, I help with a group in Warsaw because there's no funding and there's nobody to help 100 children that attend through them doors. They've got no funding, so they expect everybody to do it for free. I haven't got a problem with that. But some people do need funding because they need paying. Right. So actually, we do need to be putting more into our communities. And, you know, sometimes I might sound a bit selfish because, yes, we are part of the county council, but I'm more interested in Mansfield because it's Mansfield that I represent and I want to get it right for the residents of Mansfield. Right. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Callahan. Councillor Bruce Law.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Just like I love you too as well, Philip. You take every advantage of. This is my 23rd budget speech. Can you believe it? Some actually say it's 23 too many, but
Many's too many.
but there we go. So yeah, we'll have a vote on that. But one of the first things I did when I took over the shadow finance portfolio for Kay many years ago was get myself trained by the 151 officer and his team on how a budget works. And I think in that lies an issue that Jim Creamer brought up as far as the Ashfield Independence budget is concerned. It completely ignores the medium-term financial system. It completely ignores the impact it will have in coming years on the budget of this county council. It is a one-year budget.
It is completely incompetent. What they should do is go and see Nigel and get properly trained on how local government finance works, and then we might have an amendment that was worthwhile looking at. So I really rise to praise the department within this county council. I've watched as the leader. We have effectively had an increase in the demand on our budget of between 30 and 40 million over the next year, created by inflation. And what they have done is nearly to a man and woman, they have come in as far as the departments are concerned with underspends, and that they are to be seriously applauded to, because that makes our job easier as far as setting a budget is concerned. Let's talk about potholes. My division has the largest number of reported potholes in the county, and it's directly commensurate with the number of votes that I get at an election. My patch is that I've got the highest majority. In fact, my majority is more than what any Ashfield Independent polls in its entirety. And as a result, and what it's down to is exactly what Councillor Owen is talking about. It's about, I report them, I get them mended. So every time I do it, I get applauded by an electorate and they vote for me. Can you believe it? And it works. So I wouldn't hang your hat too much, guys, on the electability of dealing and operating potholes. In fact, one of Councillor Carr's colleagues, he actually, it was about 2012, I think it was, election. He actually he hit me on potholes. He actually he used potholes as the main reason for electing for a Lib Dem. He got slaughtered for the third time, and I increased my majority. So watch this space as far as and let's look at this. So we're asking the Ashfield Independents they're asking us to support their amendment. Well, let's look at. I was in this chamber
Point
when
of order.
Councillor Does
Point of
Rosny.
clarification. This is an Independent Alliance amendment, not an Ashfield Independent.
Oh, sit down, Carl.
No, this is.
So,
Members,
If you're that lazy that you can't get it
don't you
round,
understand? We're all fed up with you.
of course you are, because you're losing.
Can I start again, Mr.
carry
Chairman?
on.
I was in this chamber when Jason Drosny was advising Kay Cutts to borrow money on the Public Loans Board and go and buy properties. I'll tell you what's happening. In Ashfield, 30% of their revenue budget goes in paying down debt. It is an absolute recipe for a 114 notice. And for those people that don't know what a 114 notice is, it is bankruptcy. That's what it is as far as council. And most councils
Councillor,
that are going...
point of order. Councillor Martin. What is the point of it?
Review of Ashfield District Council's finances, and he gave us a glowing report. So what you're talking is utter crap.
Most councils, and here's utter crap for you. Most councils that are going down the route of 114 notices have followed their policies and their principles of making investments in offices and hotels across the country. So let's follow on from this. Councillor Hollis turned round and advised this administration to spend the 19 million.
Members. I think at the moment he's picking up on.
Councillor Hollis advised this council to spend the 19 million we got from COVID as a windfall. We put it away. And we put it away into reserves, and it's a damn good job we did it, because we've used it to be able to deal with the inflationary pressures within this council. And not only are we doing that, every single other county council across the country are doing exactly the same, but not the Ashfield Independents, I might add. So let's look at Topwick Hay Farm. Let's have a look at Topwick Hay Farm. 11.5 million we're investing in Tetwick Farm, not 18 million as reported by the Ashfield Independents. But again, they've completely ignored the medium-term financial strategy, which is where the cost of this council hall here is £5 million a year. So what are we going to do? In my book, that's 38 million quid we're going to have to find over the next 10 years just to stay in County Hall. Well, it's not going to happen, members. It's going to assure you that with this leadership in charge of County Hall. So it's all political rhetoric. It's about writing leaflets, and we all understand that, and it's important that we tell the electorate that is the case. As to the CDF, I've left that up to my colleague, Councillor Owen, who I've applauded for his technique at dealing with potholes in his division. So I am committed to this budget. I think it's an excellent budget, and there's a lot of work gone into it. As one of the largest moving feasts that I've ever had to deal with as a councillor, and the credit has got to go to the staff of this council and our leadership for ensuring that we have a balanced budget today, a balanced Conservative budget, because Conservatives get things done, don't they?
Absolutely.
Conservatives get things done. Okay, and that's what we're doing here today. And so support the Conservative budget. Thank you very much, Madam Chairman.
Yeah, no. Thank you, members. Just remember, we are live streaming, so when you make your comments, please make sure they are not offensive. We have no other speakers indicated, so I call upon the second of the motion, Councillor Bradley, to reserve rights.
Thank you, Chairman. I had 4:30 in the sweepstake. We might just make it.
I had 4:45,
right.
so you won't.
Can I first start by expressing the sympathy and repeating what colleagues have said and support for those residents in Turkey and Syria who are suffering with immeasurable pain in recent days. My heart goes out to them in a heartfelt way, and I hope I can speak for the whole council when I say that. It makes you realise, I think, how lucky we are to live in this country, and particularly in Nottinghamshire. But Mr. Chairman, it's a pleasure to be able to speak today to a budget that I think is an excellent collective piece of work, genuinely owned and put forward by the County Council as an organisation, officers and politicians working together. And this last few months working towards the budget has been the most intensive, the most detailed process that I've experienced. I think that level of additional work and scrutiny, both within the administration and through a good public discussion, through a cross-party scrutiny process, has allowed us to present something that genuinely seeks to deliver on the commitments that we've made, that aims to enhance and improve services in vital areas, whilst protecting residents from the highest tax rises. It makes it sustainable, as Councillor Jackson says. I think we're leading the way in this in many ways, particularly when you consider the historic and inbuilt challenges that we face in terms of funding disparities. And I'm pleased that it appears that everyone in the room must agree with 99.8% of it, given that we have no amendment from Labour at all, and an Ashfield Independent one that addresses just 0.2% of it. But I fear, and I know you won't believe it, Mr. Chair, and Councillor Lawton might be right, that perhaps not all of this is genuinely about the quality of the budget. It might actually be about generating headlines for newspapers and for leaflets ahead of a local election, Mr. Chairman. Indeed, Councillor Payne gave us an election address, perhaps focused with a different hat on in the comments that he made. Here he is. As far back, and members will remember, as far back as the autumn, throughout the public discussions we started to engage on this budget, we asked opposition members to make proposals so that we could properly consider them, so that we could take them through scrutiny process and we could include them in our budget. And despite this, no ideas came forward, not one. It appears Labour have no ideas at all, which is quite impressive. Although apparently, Mr. Chairman, Councillor Dreamer said they didn't bring forward their ideas just in case we actually implemented them, which I think speaks volumes about the reasons that they are here in this chamber today. It's not about getting things done, is it? It's about making political points and pointing fingers. And sadly, whilst the Ashfield Independents have brought something forward, they've ignored our calls to work together and incorporate those ideas into a budget. When they bother to show up to meetings at all, they've chosen to use them for sound bites for their leaflets rather than to genuinely do their job. And as ever, I read about their amendment in the newspapers rather than anyone coming to talk to us or having raised it for a proper discussion through our budget setting process. If the Ashfield Independents had come to speak to us, we could have explained why their proposal won't do what they say it will. We've done this to death already, Mr. Chairman. They know all about it, but they're not bothered. We are not building extra council offices. We're reducing our office estate from 17 buildings to 9, possibly even further, in order to save money. I know they're not good with money, Mr. Chairman. Councillor Lawson's explained some of the challenges they've got with money. But if they'd done the work, they'd recognise that the revenue savings from Top Wigate are what fund our public services, are what fund all the things that we've talked about that we value in this room today. And spending our capital on reducing revenue costs is what helps us to stay sustainable, to stay afloat, and to fund the most important public services that we want to see. So if they want to scrap it, that's fine, bin off the millions of pounds of investment in Hucknall, then it's not just capital. They also need to explain what they would do in the medium-term financial strategy to cover off those revenue savings. What services are they going to cut to find those revenue savings? What children's centres are they going to close? What adult care services will they scrap to fund the revenue savings they don't want to make? They need to be honest about the choices and the genuine implications if they want to do that. If they want to use capital reserves in the way that they describe, they'll need to explain which capital projects they want to cut to. Because we've already talked about the cost of inflation. It's likely we're going to need that money to deliver the major infrastructure projects in the light of that huge cost. Are they going to tell Bilsthorpe residents they aren't getting their junction improvements? Are they going to tell Ollerton residents they aren't cancelling? They're going to cancel the solutions to the Ollerton roundabout. What would they cut? Let's get beyond the leaflet headlines. Let's get beyond what is perhaps a legal one-year budget and look at the actual implications and be honest with residents about what they would do. Which capital projects would they cut if they implemented their amendment? They can't answer these questions, Mr. Chairman, because they haven't actually thought it through. They want a quick headline about roads. And the reality, of course, is they voted for our highways review improvements. It was unanimous, and they know we've already doubled the resource in terms of teams doing that work and the productivity. They know that no amount of money can control the weather or change our statutory duties in terms of what we have to deliver quickly. And they know that in truth we'd need more like 200 million, not 20 million, to genuinely do what they promise residents they can do. It's false. It's half-cocked. And whilst I have no doubt they will find a way to concoct some headline about Tories voting for offices instead of fixing roads, they know that's nonsense, Mr. Chairman. They know it. The truth is we're protecting our additional investment in roads because Top Wigate provides savings we can spend on services. They're not thinking long term, and they're not thinking along their leaflets for May's elections, and they're taking people for fools. That's the last I'll say about that. This budget provides stability for this council and for local residents in terms of knowing with some certainty that their services aren't going anywhere for the foreseeable future. It provides a stable and sustainable basis for us to deliver long-term change. And actually, it puts this organisation in a position to do more of what matters. As Councillor Jackson suggested, by not taking the maximum council tax options for the second successive year, we're no longer the highest taxed area, and we continue to fall down that table whilst rising up the charts for offering better value for our residents. Our budget focuses on core services and seeks to deliver an enhanced offer in communities. And of course, over this year, we'll discuss and we'll begin to implement plans to enhance that offer for residents in their place, in their community, and particularly those who need us the most. My aims for this year include expanding what we offer in our most disadvantaged communities through our libraries, through our children's centres, through our youth centres, and our other assets. And I want to expand the early help offer that there is for our young people, to pilot new projects, to make changes in this coming financial year. I want our organisation to be more a part of those communities, to help people pick people up when they need help, and to do that earlier. So we're improving independence, we're maximising people's resilience, we're improving lives, but ultimately saving money for the taxpayer in reducing the need for the most expensive interventions earlier down the line. When we've had consultation in the past, members opposite have called for us to be closer to communities, and that is exactly what this budget does. Whilst other councils, very close to here, in fact, are slashing these services to bits and charging the maximum council tax, our budget protects them all. Our budget will enhance them, and we're committing to do more for residents in the services that really matter, not less. So we're gradually improving the offer and the value for money that we offer for taxpayers. We're enhancing the services people need the most, making savings in the area that won't impact from the most vital frontline delivery of those services. We're providing a platform for the future to be able to transform the way we deliver them for people. And we want to spend less on our buildings and more on our services. And unlike the Ashfield Independents, we understand the difference between capital and revenue, and we can do that in a way that won't make us struggle for money in the long term. We'll do less expensive residential care in the future because we'll focus on better, earlier solutions for our vulnerable children within families, within communities. We'll spend less on travel costs so we can spend more on early help for people who need it. None of that's rocket science, but it's not a quick fix either. And those changes will take time. But this budget gives us the stability and the platform to be able to do that work. And whilst we're at it, we'll deliver our major capital commitments despite the rising costs. We've made promises to our residents and we will deliver on them. We've made promises on projects like the A614 and we will get that done. We've made promises about the increases in funding for our highways. And despite the rising costs, despite the cost of inflation, we continue to deliver it. We know that the state of the roads is a visible and universal challenge for our residents. It is all over the country. And though we can't control the weather, which has caused a huge amount of damage recently, we've doubled the amount of high quality work we're doing. We're making 50 changes to the way we deliver road maintenance to improve things in the long term. And unlike the independents, we will be honest about the challenges of that. We will continue our commitment to increase funding, increase quality and improve things over time. But I will not lie to residents and pretend that there is a magic quick fix available that we are just ignoring. If there was one, we would do it. But the truth is, it's a long and hard job, and we're committed to delivering for them. All of this groundwork is preparing for the next opportunity, Mr. Chairman, which is the additional powers and additional funds that will come our way in just over 12 months' time through our devolution plans. We know historically our region has been the lowest funded in the UK. We know we need a fairer deal, and the Combined Authority begins to address that. It will bring in more money to help develop our economy, to improve our public transport and infrastructure, including roads. So I hope members will support it. These are huge opportunities for our area. And through that deal, through Step Fusion, through the development company, other projects and investments in our county, we will make a difference. Given that the opposition members have spent all their time today slagging off national government rather than addressing the budget, I'm not sure Councillor Bolt mentioned the budget in her speech. I'm sure they will welcome more local decision-making powers that we'll bring to our area through that deal. So, Mr. Chairman, in conclusion, we recognise the significant challenges that face our residents right now, and of course, our organisation faces them too. We're doing more than ever to support residents with the cost of living, more to help community groups to offer help too, and focusing on enhancing the services that will have the most impact for the people who need us the most. We're making our savings away from the front line in order to maximise the value that residents get and focus our organisation on what really matters, which is delivering the key public services that people rely on. Meanwhile, we'll roll down the road of securing those extra powers and funds through devolution to bring further brilliant opportunities in jobs, in infrastructure, to bridge that funding gap to other regions and improve life chances. And this budget is a piece of work I'm very proud of. And I'm very grateful to officers, to members who have engaged constructively in putting it together, who have bought into those the vision and priorities that I've described today. I commend it to members, and I look forward to this administration delivering on those commitments over the course of the coming year.
Thank you, Councillor Bradley. Councillor Pure Harden, do you want to sum up from your amendment? You have 10 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, very sad news has broken this afternoon that Bacharach has died at the age of 94, and he wrote, "What the world needs now is love, sweet love." Very true. Here in Nottinghamshire, what residents need is a truly fair budget that delivers for them. Before I start, I owe an apology actually to one of our councillors. I had to go down to the bowels of the basement of Independent Alliance headquarters to admonish the apprentice of my chief speechwriter, because I mistakenly said that Councillor Jonathan Wheeler said comments in 2021 to promote the leader of the council. In fact, I insulted Councillor John O'Lee by not correctly attributing those comments to him. So my apologies for not mentioning you in dispatches. Mr. Chairman, a few months ago, I was I was I was a member of a senior staffing panel, and at the meeting, the chairman of the panel, or perhaps it was the chief executive, perhaps, explained that we decided not to proceed on the basis of a permanent contract in the future because it was appropriate for a period of time to assess the role for the future because of the changing nature of the workplace. And everyone quite agreed that that was a sensible approach to that particular issue. And I use that as an example because the Top Wighay project was perhaps started many years ago, pre-COVID, clearly, and we now face a major change in society in the way that we work, and perhaps, and there's a fork in the road that we are coming to, and that we perhaps come to today, that there is an opportunity for us to reconsider, and that's what we've debated today, whether we listen to our residents or that we continue to go down the road that was set a few years ago, and then we really will be into costs. I'm not going to go through every speech. There's been some excellent contributions, Mr. Chairman. There's been some extremely entertaining contributions, and indeed, we've all enjoyed the hot air as well. But I do want to pick up on Councillor Lawton's comments, if I may. Great tub thumping speech, absolutely perfect for the pre-leaders session that you would find in a Conservative conference anywhere, whether it's in a regional or annual conference. Complete nonsense, because your budget is a one-year budget, and you've gone adrift. You've gone adrift from last year's predictions, and you're dipping into reserves this year. So you've abandoned, in effect, the MTFS. It's just now a veil that we use in front of the budget reports. Mr. Chairman, Councillor Bradley is extremely articulate in putting over his very, very soft, furnishing, Tony Blair-esque presentations. Absolutely, absolutely. But I think I can confidently say that on this side completely, he doesn't convince anybody. So thank you, everyone. I think broadly, apart from the little bit when we were actually off air, it has been a very good tempered, respectful, and a very valuable debate. And I'm absolutely delighted to have been allowed to take part in it, and privileged to have put forward the only amendment in this debate. And Mr. Chairman, I hope that perhaps we might have a bit of a rebellion and put forward points in the people's budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Burden-Horan. Councillor Jackson, would you like to sum up before we have the vote, please?
Yeah, well, thanks very much indeed, Chairman. Councillor Burden-Horan ended by describing the people's budget, which we heard about earlier on. It reminds me of another Burt Bacharach song. Who are these people? They're not the people that are telling us what their priorities are through our successful consultation responses to the detailed questions that we asked the people of Nottinghamshire about the budget. One of the reasons that we didn't get tens of thousands of responses is because people are generally satisfied with the budget that we're putting forward. There is nothing controversial. There are no sweeping cuts to frontline services. In fact, there are no cuts to frontline services, and we haven't taken the maximum council tax increase that we could have taken. And I think that goes a long way to explain why we're not getting tens of thousands of people battering the doors down, wanting to comment on it. Chairman, I'm not going to touch on everything that's been said today, but there are lots of themes that I think I need to just cover off before we go to a vote. I'm conscious that as the leader had 4:30 for a finish time in the sweepstake, I had 4:45, but I'm not going to cut corners for the sake of taking a few pounds off my colleagues. Let me start with Top Wighay, Chairman. We're being criticised for wanting to build a building at a cost of £11.5 million from a group whose budget amendment wants to not build a building for £4.2 million. The abortive costs, which they would have to find, are £4.2 million. The choice you have is common sense, building a building that we need, a more efficient, more environmentally friendly building that we need in the right place for £11 million, or building absolutely nothing for £4.2 million. I know which way I would go on that one. I know which way they'd go as well, and it says a lot about them. Chairman, I want to say a bit more about Top Wighay, because our development at Top Wighay isn't just a council office building, it's a kickstarter for a major development of the Top Wighay site. That the entirety of that development doesn't just deliver 805 much needed homes in that part of the county, it delivers 1,000 new full-time jobs outside of the jobs that this council would put onto that site. I cannot believe that members from Ashfield and members from that part of Gedling don't welcome and aren't celebrating 1,000 new full-time quality jobs on that site in that part of the county, because that's exactly why we are building that development there. And that's what we will continue to do. And I, for one, will welcome what is independently assessed as an £873 million boost to the local economy in that part of Nottinghamshire over the first decade, once that site is built out and completed. You carry on telling people in that area you don't want it, they will judge you, I promise you. And we shall make sure that they do. Chairman, when you're running a council of this size and scale, you have to make choices and you have to have priorities. Jeopardising very significant major transport infrastructure projects like those that Councillor Bradley mentioned by taking £5 million from the National Non-Domestic Rates pool to spend short term to grab a few headlines and to repair a few more roads is not a long-term strategic vision, and it's not one that we would share in how this county is run. You explain to people, if you get your way, why significant infrastructure projects are in jeopardy right across the county, because we're not going to do that and we're not going to risk that. Councillor Owen, I think, mentioned CDF in other districts, in similar schemes to CDF in local districts, and those that don't have them. And I look forward to both the Ashfield Independent Administration at Ashfield and the Lib Dem Labour coalition at Broxtowe introducing one at the next opportunity at the budget in a few weeks, because it's those exact members who have been asking us to do that today. I was going to say there was some hypocrisy in what was said by the independent group. I'll be generous and call it confusion. They've been telling us in the media for the last 2 or 3 weeks that we're sitting on £300 million worth of reserves. This is far too much and we should spend them. And then this morning we're told by Councillor Purdue-Horan that there's no money left. That was his exact words. There's no money left. Well, neither of those statements are true. We're sitting on a prudent level of reserves. And given the volatility in the world economy and given the last few years of totally unprecedented and unpredicted financial challenges, that's why you keep a level of reserves like that. And I make no apology for doing so. It's absolutely the right thing to do. He also accused us of not communicating and being frightened to communicate with the public. And in the next breath wants to take away more than half of the resources for our communications team. Well, square that circle, Chairman, because I can't. They also criticised us for reducing workforce, and in the next breath wanted to take away a significant number of posts within the Chief Executive's department. So, Chairman, there is some confusion over there, and I'll be generous and leave it at that. We're not going to support their amendment. As I said earlier on, it actually accepts 99.86% of our revenue budget, and I suppose I should be grateful for that, and perhaps wonder why it's taken so long to get to a point where we're now going to go to a vote in a few moments. I can't speak to the Labour amendment clearly because they didn't make one. That's their choice. And members will have a view on why they haven't and on what they really want to do. So, in what I've heard from Labour members, I calculate at least £3 million of additional spending, or at least reductions and efficiencies that we've made, which they've criticised and implied there that they would want to reverse. That has to be paid for, and we've no idea how they would pay for it. The public will judge on their previous record of council tax hikes how they would pay for it, Chairman. But I could say little more than that at this point. They've also claimed the credit for Councillor Barney's correct decision, which took through Cabinet 6 months or so ago, to pay the £1 uplift to workers in adult social care. What they failed to tell you is that when I moved the budget 12 months ago, that money was in a reserve. It was in a reserve specifically to fund that payment, but it wasn't put through on the day of the budget because we were in the middle of an exercise to ensure that it would actually deliver results. As soon as we'd gone through that, and as soon as we'd seen what other councils were doing elsewhere, and that was successful, we brought it in, and that was the right thing to do. We don't just, for the sake of a headline, throw, I think it was £5 million, that wasn't it? We didn't just throw £5 million in without being absolutely certain it's going to do the job that we want it to do. One thing that concerned me in something that Councillor Fold said was that children in some of our schools are not safe. And Kate, if you have any evidence of that, I think Tracy and the Chief Executive would want to have it, and any evidence you've got of that urgently, if that's the case. If it isn't, then I think perhaps you want to reconsider your choice of words there. Wasn't how I heard it, Chairman, but again, if there's any evidence that they really are at risk of being unsafe, we want what before 4:45. Chairman, I'm being hurried up by the Deputy Leader and he scares me, to be honest. So I'm proud. I'm proud of this budget. It's a budget which I've already said doesn't reduce any services, in fact enhances services, puts us in a strong position for the future, invests in the infrastructure that's going to help this council move forward, and I urge all members to support it. Thank you, Chairman. 4:40.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. We now come to the vote. There will need to be two separate votes, one for the amendment and then one for the motion. I would take one for the amendment first. And as set out in the Constitution and required by law, there must be a recorded vote on any budget amendment and the final motion, using recorded votes procedure. Remember that there will be no show of hands vote. The Chief Executive will call the roll and will inform me of the result, and then we will go on to the next vote if the amendment is defeated. I'll hand over to Chief Exec.
Okay, members, so just to be clear, this is expressing your vote in respect of the Independent Alliance amendment. Councillor Adair.
Against.
Councillor Adams.
Against.
Councillor Anderson.
Against.
Councillor Bailey.
Against.
Councillor Barney.
Against.
Councillor Barnfather.
Against.
Councillor Bradley.
Against.
Councillor Butler.
Against.
Councillor Callaghan.
Against.
Councillor Camilleri.
Against.
Councillor Carlton.
Against.
Councillor Carr.
For.
Councillor John Clark.
Against.
Councillor Neil Clark.
Against.
Councillor Corden.
Against.
Councillor Cotty.
Against.
Councillor Creamer.
Against.
Councillor Deakin. Councillor Doddy.
Against.
Councillor Eddy.
Against.
Councillor Elliott.
Against.
Councillor Fielding.
Against.
Councillor Fole. Councillor Guilfoyle. Councillor Gowland.
Against.
Councillor Henry. Councillor Henshaw.
Against.
Councillor Hollis. Councillor Introna.
Against.
Councillor Richard Jackson.
Against.
Councillor Roger Jackson.
Against.
Councillor Kerry,
Against.
Councillor Lawton, Councillor Lee, Councillor Martin, Councillor McGrath, Councillor Meakin, Councillor Moxon, Councillor Ogle,
Against.
Councillor Oliver, Councillor Owen,
Against.
Councillor Payne,
Against.
Councillor Pringle,
Against.
Councillor Purdue-Horan,
For.
Councillor Quigley,
Against.
Councillor Saddington, Councillor Shaw, Councillor Helen Ann Smith, Councillor Sam Smith, Councillor Tom Smith, Councillor Taylor, Councillor Upton,
Against.
Councillor Waters, Councillor Welsh,
Against.
Councillor Gordon Wheeler,
Against.
Councillor Jonathan Wheeler, Councillor Daniel Williamson, Councillor Elizabeth Williamson, Councillor John Wilmot, Councillor Zadrozny.
4.
Okay, we'll do the counting.
Thank you, members. That is 14 in favour and 46 against. So the amendment that falls. We now vote for the original motion.
Yeah, Chairman, can you just clarify those figures for us, please?
Yep.
14 for, and 46 against. So it's mine. Honourable lips.
Okay, members. As the chairman said, this is to express your vote in terms of the original motion, starting as always with Councillor Adair.
For.
Councillor Adams.
For.
Councillor Anderson.
For.
Councillor Bailey.
For.
Councillor Barney.
For.
Councillor Barnfather.
For.
Councillor Bradley.
For.
Councillor Butler.
For.
Councillor Callaghan.
Against.
Councillor Camilleri. Councillor Carlton.
For.
Councillor Carr.
Against.
Councillor John Clark. Councillor Neil Clark.
For.
Councillor Corden. Councillor Cotty.
For.
Councillor Creamer.
Against.
Councillor Deakin. Councillor Doddy.
For.
Councillor Eddy.
For.
Councillor Elliott. Councillor Fielding.
Against.
Councillor Fole. Councillor Guilfoyle. Councillor Gowland. Councillor Henry.
Against.
Councillor Henshaw.
Against.
Councillor Hollis. Councillor Introna.
For.
Councillor Richard Jackson.
For.
Councillor Roger Jackson.
For.
Councillor Kerry.
For.
Councillor Lawton. Councillor Lee. Councillor Martin. Councillor McGrath. Councillor Meakin. Councillor Moxon. Councillor Ogle.
For.
Councillor Oliver. Councillor Owen.
For.
Councillor Payne.
Against.
Councillor Pringle.
Against.
Councillor Purdue-Horan.
Against.
Councillor Quigley.
For.
Councillor Saddington, Councillor Shaw, Councillor Helen Ann Smith, Councillor Sam Smith, Councillor Tom Smith, Councillor Taylor, Councillor Taylor, Councillor Upton, Councillor Waters, Councillor Welsh,
Against.
Councillor Gordon Wheeler, Councillor Jonathan Wheeler, Councillor Daniel Williamson,
Against.
Councillor Elizabeth Williamson, Councillor Wilmot, Councillor Zadrosny.
Against.
Thank you. Tottenham.
Thank you, members. With 33 votes for and 27 against, the motion is carried. Thank you, everyone, for attending today and taking part in the debate. It's been most interesting in places. The meeting is now closed. I wish you all a safe journey home.
See you then.